Alright, Brap Gang, so I wanted to bring you guys this quick review of the 2021 Polarises. I watched the live stream from a couple different dealers and was super excited when I saw that the Polaris Assault's getting an update for 2021. There are a couple sleds in the lineup that are getting an update. The kind of basic big news engine-wise is the 650 Patriot that came out. It's based off of the architecture of the 850 Patriot, but obviously in a 600, it's supposed to have class-leading power, all that stuff. Seems like a cool engine, and I'll dive into it a little bit more for my actual review of the whole 2021 Polaris lineup that I'll be doing while I'm actually riding like I did with the Skidoo video. But I couldn't help but bring you guys this video on the 2021 Assault. When they announced, after they had talked about the new Indy, I was kind of like, okay, maybe I could get an Indy 137 and kind of customize it, make it my own. And then they started to talk about the Switchback Assault, and I got ecstatic. I was literally like shouting with joy in the car when I heard about it. So I cannot stress enough how stoked I am about this sled, but I've been kind of looking through some of the stuff on it, and I figured I would talk to you guys and share what I like and what I'm kind of intrigued by and what I'm not so sure on, and we'll kind of go from there. So the starting price is $14,799. That is for the 650. If you get the 850, the starting price is $15,799. That does come with the updated new 7-inch screen, so there's no upgrading to the PIDD that's going to add cost to the sled. It doesn't look like you need to have electric start to run that gauge, so I think that's really cool. It's kind of something different than what Skidoo has. You need electric start to run their gauge. So the first thing I wanted to go over were some of the stats about the sled that I noticed right off the bat. I compared it to the old Switchback Assault in the Axis chassis, the 144, and the SKS 146. So right off the top, the new Switchback Assault is a 146, like the Backcountry and like the Riot. You know, not too much of a difference overall there with the length. I think it kind of comes down to like half an inch, to be totally honest with you. As far as room in the trailer goes, it shouldn't really affect anybody all that much. Just kind of the way the industry is going, and I think you can kind of get more track choices that way. Not a lot of 144s out there at this point. So they do talk about how light the sled's supposed to be, but if you actually look at the weight, the estimated dry weight of the new updated 146 Switchback Assault is 476 pounds, whereas the Axis chassis Polaris Assault with the 144 is 456 pounds or 468 depending on the engine that you get in it. So that's obviously 600 versus 850. The SKS 146 comes in at 475 pounds. So out of the three of their like crossover sleds, this is actually the heaviest. I noticed that they now have an 11.5 gallon gas tank, so losing about half a gallon of fuel storage. Not a huge difference overall, but I know there are some guys that are going on really long trips, and you know, half a gallon could definitely matter for them, so something to keep in mind there too. The overall length of the sled is exactly the same. It's 125 inches overall, same as the SKS. So I think the chassis are pretty much just the same in general. So that's, you know, from the ski tip to the snow flap or however they measure it. It's not so much about the actual length of the track. And you could always tell between the Polaris Assault 144 and the SKS 146 that they were built on the same overall platform. They just had different track options. Ski stance is the same, 42.5 inches from center to center. Surprised to see that yet again the Polaris Assault still doesn't have an adjustable spindle. You know, you could have something that would go from trail to narrower. I'm not saying you have to start narrower, but I think it's that one thing that would really bring the sled forward, in my opinion. But not the end of the world. For most guys, they're never going to touch it. They're just going to leave it the way it is. So I'm sure Polaris has their reasons why they didn't update it. Another interesting thing I just noticed is the rear skid's the Pro CC now. It's not the IGX anymore. So curious to see why they went that direction and what kind of difference there'll be in performance. Still has the tipped up rails, but yeah, they're calling it the Pro CC. So could be overall better performance from the skid, bump wise and all that. Still uncoupled, so should still perform well off trail, but definitely curious to try that out. So as you can see, as far as the options go, first things first, you pick the sled, pick your engine, 850 Patriot for me. Now there is an additional track option. That's the 1.5 Ice Storm track. So they kind of had always never had the Ice Ripper in the Assault, and it was popular in the Backcountry. I know a lot of guys that did get it in that sled. So kind of time that they brought it to this sled. The 1.6 Cobra is still there, the 2-inch is still there, the 1.35 Cobra is still there. So all the typical options everybody liked. An additional option for a little bit extra traction from the factory, always a good thing, pleasing more buyers. Next up are the color options. So this is kind of where I'm surprised, to be totally honest. Polaris, I've always given them a ton of credit for how awesomely customizable their sleds have been. One of the things that brought me over from Skidoo, to be totally honest. And this year, it seems like they almost kind of pulled a little Skidoo move. They kept the newer chassis with some more subtle colors, and they kind of put some really cool colors on the older sleds with some purples, some cool limes and things like that. I think there's still some cool color options that you could pick in here. I know a lot of you guys go for the all black, so just for now we'll spec it out with the all black. But definitely some cool things you could do. I'm interested to see what they do as far as like wrap companies go and see what they come out with. I think you'll be able to do some cool things with this sled. It is cool how it says Assault across the kind of gas tank area. I think that's a nice little addition. Next up, like I said, you pick pull start or electric start. Glad that they can still do that, keep the weight light on the new sled. Whereas Skidoo, if you get their best gauge, you need the electric start. You get your windshield options, you know, low, mid, tall, all that. The Walker Evans Velocity 2 shocks have made their way to the Polaris Assault, which I think is awesome. You know, there had been the Backcountry XRS for a couple seasons now. The Assault had been really unchanged since 2017, other than the addition of the 850 Patriot. I thought for sure if there wasn't at least Assault XCR or Assault Chaos, there might be something like this. I was definitely more expecting like an Assault Chaos or Assault XCR. I was not expecting an updated chassis or whatever you would call this. But super happy to see that they brought a new updated sled and immediately put it in the Assault. You know, the crossover market is obviously a pretty big market, and I think it's as important as any market to kind of keep those customers interested and intrigued. And good for Polaris for bringing something cool this year when, you know, Skidoo and Arctic Cat's got the Riot X with the Alpha Skid, but other than that, those other two brands really didn't bring anything new. So something for the crossover guys to be excited about. I noticed they got rid of the Pro Taper handlebars. A little disappointing, to be totally honest. I always thought that was kind of a cool feature of the Polaris Assault. You got the updated handlebars. It was kind of a cool thing that just set that sled apart from the other sleds in Polaris's lineup. Not the end of the world. To be honest, I never swapped my handlebars because I always thought to myself, oh, I don't want to get rid of my Pro Tapers. But now with just a regular set of handlebars, I might be more inclined to maybe get some like Cheetah Factory Racing bars or something like that. And again, the next thing is the 7S display with Ride Command integration. So some cool stuff about that. You can kind of track people in your group. I'm assuming they have to have Polaris gauges as well. The PIDD obviously was a big step for a lot of people. Now this gauge is standard on the Polaris Assault, which I think is interesting. It definitely drives the price up. It's cool because I'm kind of one of those people that tends to try to keep the cost of my sleds low, so I'll give up options like that. It's cool that I'll have it so that I can check it out if I were to get this sled, but at the same time, I don't really like being forced to get stuff. So for that reason, it would have been nice to kind of just see what the price difference would have been with either the standard gauge or the PIDD. But you automatically get the updated gauge with this sled, so when you're looking at that price, you don't have to worry about adding on the updated gauge. So all in all, if you were to stick with the base track and then just kind of pick your colors and pick your sled, your price is $15,799. I don't think very many people get the 1.3. I know some of you guys out there have gotten it on your Assault, but I think with the other 3-track options and the amount of buyers that'll probably get brought over from the SKS 146 market or other competitors, you know, you might see more 2 inches out there and things like that. So an interesting thing is they call it the Matryx front suspension. Everything I see with it makes it look like the old IFS suspension that the Polarises have had, just with an updated spindle. I've literally looked at pictures of it next to the old Polaris Assault and it doesn't look any different. Maybe it is, or maybe they're just calling it that with the updated spindle. I'm kind of curious because I love having my adjustable spindle, so if I were to get this sled, I would want to hopefully carry that over. And at first I thought I could, but now reading that it says Matryx front suspension, I'm kind of not super sure on if that's actually possible or not. We'll obviously have to see. I'll probably be able to check it out this weekend in person, so that'll be a big plus. I can definitely kind of eye that up and see if it actually looks any different. The mounting points look the same, so in my head I really think I can just swap it over and then still have an adjustable spindle, which is really big in my opinion. But for now, I'm not too sure. I'm having trouble deciding whether to call it a chassis or this bodywork. They're calling it the Matryx platform. it doesn't really look a lot different than the Axis. A lot of the mounting points look the same on it. The profile of like the upper cowling and the panels and where the panels meet your legs looks similar. It does obviously look narrowed up, but I have trouble calling it an all-new sled. Even when you look at that, like the rear part of the chassis, it almost lines up identically to the Polaris Assault. So I'm assuming it's more of a bodywork refresh, but still cool, still something that I think the Axis needed. It's a really good chassis and I really enjoy it. One of the most comfortable chassis I've personally been on, but it had been out literally since 2015 unchanged. So it was definitely time for Polaris to do something to kind of spike some new interest. And with what they had been doing with the Axis R, I was thinking, you know, this has got to make its way over to the consumer Axis somehow. And this kind of seems like it's along similar lines. You know, they were able to narrow it up, give the rider more room to move around the bodywork. That's kind of the biggest thing I would say I've noticed. As you can see, the panels are kind of sculpted more, and there aren't so many of those big flat surfaces. Everything's kind of sculpted to let you move forward or move back. It does seem like kind of like right here, you can see where they've almost sculpted it for a little bit extra wind protection. So that'll keep a lot of riders happy as well. It looks like there's an updated ski as well. The profile underneath looks the same, but the side molding and obviously the ski tip look different. Not a whole lot out there on like the ski, but so yeah, they do have a new headlight. It's a 6 projector beam optic design. So Polaris already had one of the best headlights in the industry. I would say they were pretty even with Arctic Cat. Polaris leading the way a little bit because I think their high beam's better personally, but low beam wise, they're pretty even. The Polaris just at night when you turn the high beam on, it just lights up the whole trail. But an even better headlight coming from Polaris, definitely huge. I think they're by far the leader in the segment, and you know, companies like Skidoo definitely need to step up their headlight design. When I was contemplating possibly getting a Skidoo, I was definitely worried about like, am I going to swap the bulbs out or whatever. So the new updated bodywork is 4.8 inches narrower at the console and 3 inches narrower at the knees. So one of the things I said when I compared the Riot to the Assault this year was that all the hard edges on the Assault kind of impact your legs and make it so it's a little bit harder to move around on the bodywork itself, whereas on the Arctic Cat they're very rounded and you can definitely slide around a lot better. And it looks like this is that type of design that you can definitely slide around the bodywork and put yourself in more places than you could on the Axis chassis. So I think the main things to be excited about are the new bodywork, the Walker Evans Velocity 2s, and the updated gauge. Very cool stuff there. Definitely enough to be excited about for most of the Assault market. I think we'll see a lot of this stuff kind of carry over, obviously, to the rest of the lineup in the next couple of years. But for 2021, it's awesome that we have something to look forward to for the crossover guys and for the trail guys. I'm sure you mountain guys will get it soon, but that's just kind of my opinion. And I'll definitely keep digging into it, keep trying to look into as much as I can about the sled, and I'll try to keep you guys in the know on what I end up doing for next season.